We are setting records here at Morning Offering each and every day through the one, the only Pat Odie Murray, as she conducts this portion of the show, A Chat with Pat.
Yes, and today I'm so excited. We have with us Dr. Kenneth Craycraft, and if I'm right, Dr. Craycraft, you are a professor at Mount St. Mary's Seminary and School of Theology here in Ohio, aren't you?
That's correct, yes, in Cincinnati. It's the Seminary for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, correct.
That's wonderful. I know we have numerous seminarians there, so we're so excited. So excited to have you on because the minute I saw this title, I had to read it because this is something I've been frustrated about for a long time. And the name of the article, it's in the Catholic World Report, and I would encourage people to read it. When words mean anything, they mean nothing. Ness. So I want you to, yeah, because that's in parentheses. So I want you to kind of talk about this with our audience, because you kind of start the article by talking about the Supreme Court hearing on women in sports and also the Senate hearing on the abortion drug. What's going on here with language, especially in these two instances that you bring to the forefront?
Yeah, well, in both of those instances, I listened to the oral argument in a major Supreme Court case on men and boys participating in girls' and women's sports by calling themselves, quote, transgender, as opposed to the other kind of men or women that are, quote, cisgender, unquote. Well, these are nonsensical words. They're made-up words, and they're rooted in a particular ideology. And what was so disappointing to me as I listened to the Supreme Court hearing is that even the justices who I'm almost certain will vote the right way in this case, and that is to uphold states' laws that restrict girls' sports to girls, even they referred to these so-called trans boys, that is, or trans girls, rather, that is, boys who quote, identify. You have to put everything in scare quotes, Pat, when you talk about these things. Refer to them with female pronouns and refer to them as either trans girls or transgender, and these, as I said at the outset, this was so disappointing to me because these are made up words, but worse than just being made up words, they're words that are rooted in a particular kind of ideology, and that's how words get their meaning. Words get their meanings from particular stories and particular traditions and legends and particular philosophies and even ideologies. And so when we use a word that is the product of a particular ideology, it's necessarily the case that we actually are subscribing to the truth of that ideology. And that's what was so disappointing. And then you mentioned there was a U.S. Senate committee hearing on the dangers of the chemical drug mifepristone, in which a senator asked a prominent physician, an OBGYN physician from Emory University in Atlanta, very, very prestigious medical school, can men get pregnant? And she refused to answer the question. She said that it's a political question and that she's not going to answer it because the only purpose of asking it is to make a political point. Well, if an OBGYN can't answer the simple question whether or not men can get pregnant, then we're in a world of hurt. And once again, as the point of the article is that if words mean anything, then they mean nothingness. And the reason, Pat, that I add that NESS in parentheses is that what we're really talking about is words rooted in meaninglessness. So it isn't just that they mean nothing, it's that they signify nothingness. That is to say, they signify that the people who use these words and phrases are literally starting from a standpoint in which words are just made up according to any particular ideology, and if you don't agree with them, it can be enforced upon you. Now, we haven't seen as an extreme case in the U.S. as we've recently seen in Canada, but we can't be far behind. In Canada recently, a man was fined $750,000. In fact, he was ordered to pay $750,000 to 2 or 3 people, I think it was, in a school in Canada. Why? Because he refused to lie about those persons' sex and gender. He refused to use false pronouns. He refused to participate in the lie that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. And a tribunal in Canada ordered him to pay $750,000. Why? And this is right out of the opinion, Pat, I'm not exaggerating, because he hurt their feelings. And that's where we are, and that's
Yeah.
that's why I wrote this article, because this is a very disturbing trend.
One of the things that you do beautifully, I think, in this article is you talk about one of my favorite people, St. Thomas More,
Yeah.
and then you also pull in
Yes.
Pope Leo's comments. Can you kind of give us a snapshot of those to the audience?
Yes. Well, I take a scene from the play about St. Thomas More called A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt, and he was met on the road in the play. He was met on the road by his daughter and son-in-law, saying that the act of supremacy was going to be enforced by an oath. And Moore said to Margaret and to Roper, his son-in-law, what are the words of the oath? And Roper said, it doesn't matter what the words are. We know what it means. And Moore said, no, it means an oath is made of words. And he said, it will mean what the words mean. And the reason I use that is that words mean what words again are rooted in particular reality or particular assertions of reality or non-reality, and therefore we can't fool around with words the way that the Supreme Court and other people have done, because the oath is made up of words. Words are real, right? Mm-hmm. Words signify something that's real, or they signify something that is rooted in a truth claim, and therefore Moore said we have to take them seriously. And then, yes, the Pope gave a wonderful speech when he talked about the fluidity of language and the contortions of semantic ambiguity, as he calls it. And what you said, language is becoming more and more a weapon with which to deceive or to strike and offend opponents. Now, Pat, if that doesn't summarize what's going on in the U.S. and in Europe as well, then I don't know what does. And then the Pope Leo goes on to say, when words lose their connection to reality, reality itself becomes debatable and ultimately incommunicable. And that's exactly why I called this piece, when words mean anything, they mean nothingness, because that's exactly what Pope Leo is referring to, the nothingness that produces these kinds of nonsensical words. And then those nonsensical words are used as weapons against their opponents. And that's exactly what we see going on in many places in the U.S. And I mentioned this extreme example in Canada as well.
Well, one of the things, Professor, is I find this just in communicating with people in general, so often I have to ask, what does that word mean to you? Like we're talking about human dignity, or we're talking about respect, or we're talking even things that we used to have a very solid understanding of.
Exactly.
And even that's gone. And so I find myself constantly asking people to redefine, or not redefine, but to define what it means to them. Does that play into this whole thing that you're talking about too?
It absolutely does, and you took the words out of my mouth. I was about to use the example of dignity when you introduced, this problem of having to define words, because people use the word dignity in the U.S. Two different groups of people use the same word, that is dignity. One uses it to defend human life from unborn life to the most frail life at the end of life. Another uses the exact same word to defend abortion and euthanasia.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the problem that we have when words mean anything, they mean nothing. And if we have to ask the definition of words every time we have a conversation, we really can't have a serious conversation.
Oh, Professor Craycraft, I love this article and I love talking to you. Thanks so much for being with us today. Gosh,
well,
you were
thank you.
great.
I'm happy to come on anytime.
Okay, great. Take care. Bye-bye.